name is Juliet Gilkes Romero. My new play, The Whip, unravels the untold story of how the abolition of slavery was finally achieved. I sat down with the show's director, Kimberley Sykes, to discuss what happened.
So the play begins in 1833 in the House of Commons as they are debating the Factory Bill, which is reducing the number of hours that children are required to work. And we meet this extraordinary man called Alexander Boyd, who's fighting for the Factory Bill.
Lord Mayborn arrives and basically gives Lord Boyd, Alexander Boyd, mission impossible. Whip MPs into agreeing an abolition bill and a way to get out of slavery through delivering a compensation fund to the slave owners.
The 1833 Slavery Abolition Act formally freed some 800,000 colonial slaves who were then the legal property of Britain's slave owners. The contributions to this act from social reformers, including William Wilberforce and Thomas Clarkson, are relatively well known. What is less well known is that the same act contained a provision for the financial compensation of the slave owners for the loss of their property.
HMRC released a tweet on a Friday, fun fact, telling the public that they had been helping to pay off the compensation paid to the slave owners. Anybody who was working up until 2015, their tax money went into this. The government essentially mortgaged future generations.
There are a number of forgotten figures in the popular narrative surrounding abolition. Among them are freed slaves and runaways. My character, Mercy Price, mirrors the life of Mary Prince. She became the first black woman to petition Parliament on the subject of emancipation. Debbie Korley, who plays runaway and abolitionist Mercy Price, joined me to talk about her character. Tell me about Mercy Price.
She's an incredible human being, a human being that has endured, toiled, but still stands tall.
So I based her on Mary Prince.
Yes.
And as we know, unfortunately, Mary didn't live to see abolition go through, so I wanted to dramatise her. How much did you know about Mary Prince before we started doing this?
Well, truthfully, Mary Prince, I knew that she existed, but I didn't know quite how much she'd done for the abolitionist movement, quite how far she'd campaigned. The fact that she was the first black woman to write a petition and gather so many people from the UK up and down, and then go to Parliament and say, you know, we need to stop this. I can't imagine the bravery for her to step inside a space like that and say, you know, this is something that needs to be stopped.
I have been a slave. I have felt what a slave feels, and I know what a slave knows. And I would have all the good people in England to know it too. I am often much vexed, and I feel great sorrow when I hear some people in this country say that the slaves do not need better usage and do not want to be free. They believe the foreign people who deceive them and say slaves are happy. I say, not so. How can slaves be happy when they have the halter round their neck and the whip upon their back?
There's part of her autobiography where she talks about being put in a marketplace with her family, and one by one they're all just separated, and that heartbreak I can't imagine. But again, this was a woman who was made of such strong stuff, and to go through something like that but still fight for so many other people, there are no words.
Of course, the past speaks to the present, and social historian Professor Les Henry says the shadow of slavery exists today.
Professor Les, we're stood here outside the House of Commons, a seat of Parliament and democracy. It's amazing to think that actually Mary Prince was here and handed in a petition to fight for the abolition of the slave trade. How significant was the passing of the 1833 Abolition Act?
It was significant in the sense that it ended chattel enslavement or African chattel enslavement. But to me, if we want to really think about it, we have to think about some of the other drivers that were happening that got them to that point. There's a complex history there that I think people need to discuss.
So I've been walking around and I saw the Buxton Memorial in the park, which commemorates Wilberforce, Thomas Clarkson, who, as we knew, boarded slave ships and collected information, but it doesn't commemorate the grassroots abolitionists, and certainly not the black ones. What can you tell us about?
Because I believe it says, is it William Wilberforce and others?
Yes.
Well, it's the others who are important, and you know, especially in the context of Mary Prince, who is Mercy Price in your play.
Yeah.
Here is an African woman, an ex-chattel slave, presenting in the House of Parliament. And not only presenting, but articulating herself in a fashion that actually stirred and moved people in there. We don't hear anything about the Africans, you know, who resisted, transcended chattel enslavement. And I think that when we talk about Wilberforce's others, the others need to have a seminal voice. And you give the others a voice in your wonderful play.